Hello everyone and welcome to Fleet's Catchup Ramblings. What will, for now, hopefully, be the final Catchup Ramblings. We got through all of the questions on Wednesday, but of course I would like to let people know that, well, um, well, we're going to go back through the list. We're going to have a look and we're going to see if we can answer the rest of the questions, the ones that I kind of left for later, and we're going to crack on through them as best we can. Let me just... there we go. Let me just let the folks on Patreon know what's going down. Even though some of them will no doubt have already seen it, but, well, it helps to let them know what's going on. So, of course, this will be going for an hour and a half to an hour, so half an hour to an hour and a half. Basically, depending on how long it takes, but the cut-off point is 7 o'clock UK time. So that is when it ends, regardless of where we are or not. So, without further ado, excuse me, let's bring in the let's bring in the Discord audience so we can get started. So there we go. Let's. Hey, what can I say? It's a Friday. It's been a week. It's been a second. It's been a week since last week. But well, what's a guy to do, eh? Right. So let me just. So from the top, going downwards. So most of these were answered. That one is for Rex, but I won't see Rex till tomorrow. And the MTB80 story is being held for the Ramblings with Chieftain at some point in December or January. That one is actually unanswered. That one is actually unanswerable. Keep going through. I think we answered that one. Yeah, we did. So through that. Yep, same thing. Through there. So this may end up being a very, very short, catch-up
What Fleet
rambling.
fails to realise is he's actually gone through all of these.
No, I'm going through the ones that, because there were some that I held off because they were quite long questions. They weren't in the unanswerable category. There were some that I just held off. Like, for example, this one from Ramblings 47. Do you think that RAF tornado GR losses during the Gulf War was because of the low-altitude bombing mission and because of RAF insistence on the low-altitude mission being most effective, unlike USAF and USN tactics of high-altitude precision bombing? Do you think the RAF copied low-altitude USAF F-111 missions in Vietnam and said that'll be the most effective with their tornado fleet? I think, honestly, given what I know of RAF tactics and the way the tornado is meant to be used, it's a low-level interdictor. It's a low-level strike asset. It can do high-altitude missions, but the tornado thrives as a low-altitude penetration aircraft.
It follows on from the Buccaneer in that regard. They're designed to go low and quick and take out targets.
It's a thing you see across the various nations of the world. You see it in Russia with the Su-24. You see it in America with the F-111, and to a lesser extent Strike Eagle. You see it with the Tornado. Make no mistake, the USAF and USN did do low-altitude missions in Iraq. There were just less of them comparatively to RAF strike packages, because the RAF strike capability in Iraq is the Tornado. That's your lot. That's what you get. So of course the RAF is going to do low-altitude missions, because that's what they're going to do. I don't think that really has anything to do with loss ratio. I think if RAF Tornadoes are the only asset that the RAF has that is engaged with enemy ground targets, it's highly likely they're going to suffer the most losses. That's just the way attrition works. They're the closest to the enemy in terms of actually being engaged and destroyed, so they're going to take the most engaged and destroyed. That's my thoughts on that question. This may be a shorter video than I had thought. Return of Ramblings. I mean, it's not...
Did you even do your prior planning of looking at the document before you started this?
I never said I was going to prior plan.
You mean that thing which me, Clark, Foxo, and a good few others have suggested you do?
I mean, to be fair, I ain't got time for that.
Yes, you do.
I ain't got commitment for that. Thoughts on the... bloody hell. I'm not tired, I had a good night's sleep last night. Thoughts on the F-86 Saberdog. Do you think they're trying to replicate F-86 performance into a dedicated interceptor, or do you think it's a stopgap intercept until the F-102 and F-104 enter service? And also to cover the cancelled XF-90. Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I did do a little bit of digging into the Saberdog after I declared this question somewhat unanswerable and I had to go away. Yeah, the Saberdog was absolutely a stopgap measure. It was a slight increase in performance to gain a slightly better interception platform, basically almost solely designed as a counter to bombers. Some air forces did take them on for use in a CAS role and a multi-role role. The Japanese did, the South Koreans did, the Yugoslavian Air Force did. But they were designed primarily as interceptors, first and foremost. But they were stopgaps in essence. So did that one. Done, 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 done. Done, done, done. Dun 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 dun. Hey, da 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 da. I don't know why I'm just
Going minorly insane.
Minorly. What planet are you on?
The one where Britain's famous for, understatement
and sarcasm.
Well,
Snarky comments.
Yes. I need cola.
You really don't have many questions to go through at all, do you?
No, but then again, we can just open it up to. We can do a different thing as well. Hey, this is a multi-useful slot. Just because it starts with one thing doesn't mean it has to finish on one thing. I'm like Drac. I can do more than one thing at one time.
Really now?
Yes.
Really?
Multifaceted.
I think a few
question
people would
time.
disagree with that.
I'm fairly multitaskable. I know.
Truck.
I'm not a truck. Bolst.
So all those questions you got on Wednesday after I disappeared, you put on the document, right? Like I told you to, right?
No, because they were specifically not supposed to go on the document, Dragon. That was... I specifically said that was going to happen.
I wasn't there at that point.
Because there's no point putting... Dragon, they're not going on the document, and if you put them on the document, I'm not answering them. The whole point is they're not supposed to add to the document.
Oh no, any questions asked when you're taking questions should therefore be added.
No, not
No.
not in catch-up ramblings. That's the whole point.
Yes. Otherwise, what's the point of having a document which explains where you've answered questions?
Yes, but here's the thing: if they're the
Also,
whole
keep at
point,
least
the whole
form.
the whole point of those new questions was just to pass time to and finish at a nice even point, and they were all answered. They were all short, sharp questions I could hammer out rather rapidly, as they were asked to be. And the Ramblings audience actually did a really good job of providing interesting questions that were relatively quick to answer. So thank you, Ramblings audience. Sustenance.
Even the chat saying, "Yeah, sure you are." We can multitask.
Are they?
Rock.
Yes,
Oh, it's
a
empty.
number of people are doubtful.
Number 1. I see singular.
Out of 10, enough.
You don't just get to change.
Yes, you do.
No, that's not.
Yep, nope. Sorry, taking over here.
No, fuck you. It's
Viva
my
la
show.
revolution.
Don't make me get the fox.
Bring it.
CJ, please read the title of the
Hey, I can easily,
Discord,
if you
please.
need me to, I can easily sick the fox on you.
Oh, I did that one. I think. Oh, hang on. Actually, I can actually. Oh, well, yeah. This is one of the reasons I wanted to do this, because I wanted some people to bounce ideas off of.
Oh god.
CJ, it's Fleet's catch-up ramblings. The entire ramblings is the catch-up ramblings.
Wow.
So, it's our good friend the Macedonian again. He's gone on vacation to Spain and has fallen in love with the nation. The year is 1925, and the nation requests purchase of construction of new ships, which is what the Spanish were doing anyway. 5 30,000-ton dockyards have been constructed. I assume that means dockyards including slips and dry docks, so that's fairly
What
useful.
year is it, sorry?
Pardon?
What year? What did you say it was?
1925. So this is just
Ooh, boy.
this is just on the verge of Spain's financial collapse. But as you're about to see, that's not really a problem. 5 30,000-ton dockyards. Yeah, Spain was basically riding high on its sales it had made during the First World War until about 1926, and then they started to slow down earlier, and then the Depression hit them even harder than it hit a few other people. So 5 30,000-ton dockyards, which means I've got 5 dry docks, which is actually really useful, now available. Our Macedonian friend decides he'll fund our purchase of ships, as his investments have already stabilised the economy. We don't need to worry about what budget. What do you build or buy? Well, it's 1925, so first things first.
It's 1925. The Washington Naval Treaty's in effect.
I know, this is why I wanted... Because I started answering it yesterday, and then I went, hang on a minute. Because even if I just build 5 battleships of 30,000 tons, that's immediately going to bring the Washington Naval Treaty signatories down on my head going, excuse me? What are you doing?
That means you've now just basically said to France, we've got a bigger navy than you.
Yeah, this is the thing. It's how am I going to...
France and Italy are going to go, yo, what, mate?
Yeah, exactly. This is the thing.
I can say exactly what I would do.
I mean, it's...
Go to hell.
Well, you see, John Brown and Company had this really cool idea for a fast capital ship that wouldn't stir up the treaties and was looking to be sold overseas. And was based off an earlier project of theirs.
The problem that we've got is that even if we build... we've basically got to play real fast and loose here, because ideally we'd like to avoid being dragged into the treaties if we can avoid it.
No, I'd say it's the opposite.
I don't think you can avoid getting dragged into the treaties.
No,
This is what I was thinking.
right.
Yeah, I don't know if you can.
If you're building capital ships, yeah, they're going to
No. I would argue you want to be dragged into the treaties. Because being a signature of the treaties is a de facto declaration that you are a major or at least minor power.
I mean, yes, but I mean, the thing is, if we can get away with getting 30,000-ton battleships in service and then get ourselves dragged into the treaties, basically, what I'm saying is, we basically tell the Italians and the French, now, you can either go to war with us or you can accept us as an equal. What's your choice? And I know full well what both of them will say. Because it won't be off. Because they don't have the economic or military potential to realistically conduct a campaign of any real significance against Spain. Not
France does.
Not like Spain can fight back.
The problem is that would look no one's
violators of the violators of the treaty.
Well, thing is,
yeah, and that would bring the British down on them.
Yeah, the British are like, sorry, what?
Yeah, but here's the thing. No, like I said, the basic premise is we're saying we're willing to join the treaty, but as we have 30,000-ton battleships, we want to be considered equals of France and Italy. We want to be able.
And they will laugh in your face and say no. Because
remember,
this is Spain.
France was already trying to get the same agreements as Japan had.
Yeah,
but they only agreed with their tonnage because they accepted concessions in terms of cruisers and destroyers tonnage limits.
Okay.
France and Italy will not allow Spain to be the equivalent in tonnage to them.
Depends. In this period we're still the Spanish monarchy. We're still the Spanish monarchy. And to be fair,
but you're under Primo de Rivella's dictatorship.
Yes, but that dictatorship tends to always lean more Francophile than it does Italianophile.
Certainly.
So while there might be some general grumbling in the French government, bear in mind this is still the French government that changes every 5 seconds and also is deadly afraid of its army. The option of having a somewhat reliable ally who will be grateful that they were allowed to get a certain position next to France, and therefore someone who would probably back them in the event of the Italians or the Germans doing anything funny, which therefore means they don't have to rely so much on their army, which they're constantly afraid is going to coup the government, no matter which government of France it is. This is a common thing that keeps
France is still busy with its own politics. It's a case of, we can't trust a foreign nation either to do this.
Yeah, because in 2 years' time, the Spanish and the French do team up against the Moroccans. So there is some friendliness, but still, I don't see anyone allowing them 5 battleships. Sorry.
Because the issue is...
I was saying to let you finish.
That's fine.
Right. Okay, France and Spain do get on in a bit once the Moroccans basically attack a bunch of French outposts. But that was the whole point of that, was that the Moroccans thought that they'd persuade the French into basically smacking the Spanish into doing a peace treaty or something to stop this whole nonsense, but it kind of backfired on them a bit. Spain in this period is, I suppose, you've not got the economic problems, but that, I just don't, because Spain is still very protectionist. To a certain extent, I don't see why they'd want 5 battleships.
Do they actually have the stuff to work with 5?
The thing, because they also don't have.
Okay, right.
Yeah, that's the point. They probably don't have the steel.
The funny thing, buy this in. I'm more thinking the only experience they have operating battleships are the Españas.
Yes.
The 3 Españas.
Which
haven't actually
very
used.
Good.
Which I will point out were always intended and always seen as by the Spanish Navy, even when constructed, as a very basic stepping stone. The Spanish Navy knew exactly what they were.
They never progressed from them.
Yes,
though.
And which is why this is now 10 years later.
But they always had plans to progress from them.
But those plans were never implemented, so they don't actually have the doctrinal knowledge.
I'm gonna have to stop you right there, Chief.
Fleet. As we see regularly, institutional knowledge. You don't just build one class of battleship and go, we know how to build battleships.
even the South African nations knew, we're still figuring out how to battle a ship.
No, not exactly.
Like, what other large-scale capital units have they had experience with operating of this scale?
In terms of full-size fleet units, Spain's long history of operating ironclads and armored cruisers, of having officers
Which are not
of having
30,000 tons.
Yeah.
Are we talking about the
Like-
ability of the general crew to operate the ships, or are we talking about the doctrine to use the ships?
Both.
Both.
Well, the doctrine
Like the
to use...
institutional knowledge on repair, maintenance, use,
We're talking
how
about...
you train, coordinate crews on that larger vessel.
We're talking about the Spanish Navy. We're not talking about the Yugoslavian Navy. Come on, be realistic.
I
here.
mean,
Yeah,
the
but
Spanish
fleet-
Navy,
fleet-
you
fleet,
do realise
remember,
that in 36, when they killed all the officers, they had a massive problem operating these battleships because the crews just couldn't handle them.
Yes,
without-
because it turns out you need officers and men to cruise ships. So when you remove one half of that team, I wonder what happens.
Even before that, though, they don't
Yeah,
have...
but the Spanish were
the
doing this
innate
pretty
knowledge.
regularly throughout the Ironclad era. Because Spain was a dumpster fire,
Yes, but I will point
So
out.
by this
politically.
point-
But I will point
So it's
out
what,
by the
1925?
Yeah, right, fleet.
by the mid
look,
twenties.
Jamie the First
by
was
the
finished
mid
4 years ago. to this
by the
point.
mid 20s, sorry, basically by the end of the First World War, the Spanish Navy is in a very good position. They've managed. This is one of the things that people forget. In the aftermath of the Spanish-American War and up to about before the budget is turned off in the late 20s, the Spanish Navy goes through a period of basically renaissance. Decent crew training, a robust flag structure, decent pipeline for recruit from officers through to flag rank, with a desire to expand the navy, with more destroyers coming in, new cruisers arriving. It's only the decline only starts again when the budget dries up in the late 20s, and then we get the Depression and the Civil War.
Yeah, but I think, right, fleet, we're
With-
not claiming they don't know how to command ships, don't know how to command fleets.
I mean, that's literally
but
what
this
you just
is
said.
very
No.
much a...
Yeah, I did.
a-
That's
No.
alright. That was a bit of a mistake.
Yeah,
They don't have the doctrinal or institutional knowledge to operate ships of the scale
Yeah,
effectively.
it's a fact that
I
the Spanish
I
have
feel
largely
like-
been a cruiser-based navy, have they not?
yes, but I feel
Like,
like you
They
are
are,
fundamentally.
they're brilliant at operating cruisers. I will
I-
give them that.
I feel like I understand what the points you're making, but I do feel like you are massively short selling.
I think you're massively overselling.
I'm not claiming they're going to be stupidly efficient, but to claim they wouldn't know how to operate a squadron of battleships
Fleet.
or two squadrons
Wait,
of
You're
battleships.
doubling the
Fleet.
tonnage of their
Yeah.
heaviest.
They literally have never used a ship of 30,000 tons, or
Okay.
even 25,000, or even 20,000
Okay.
until much later.
Okay, so let me get this straight. Assuming that we can train the crews, right?
Hmm.
And the officers know what they're doing, and what is the difference doctrinally to offer between? Obviously, you can do slightly more things with them in terms of capability, but boil it down to the barest nub. If you have three capital ships of say 16,000 tons, and then you have three capital ships of 30,000 tons. Boil it down to the barest nub of what a battleship is and what a battleship can do. Doctrinally, what is the difference?
Massive increase in logistics requirements, massive increase in overall support needed for the actual fleet to function.
Which is nothing to
Supporting
do with
elements.
what you've been
Changing in
talking
battle
about.
ranges.
Ranges.
The fact that battleships are beginning to be able to move and change course while maintaining accurate fires.
This,
Fire
That's the
control
big
system.
change.
I
Also,
genuinely,
Like one of the big
I-
jumps of the Admiralty Fire Control System fleet
I
is that it can account for the ship turning.
I genuinely just, I am
Right,
losing
okay,
the will
fleet.
to live with these
Right.
stupid nitpicks.
But it's
Yeah,
not.
fleet.
These nitpicks, as you call them, are all part of what is needed to be figured out to serve these fleets. They are needed to function.
Yeah, because right here, because here's my idea. Right, hear me out, Fleet. They have a very strong cruiser corps, right?
Which can easily translate into operating battleships. This was proven by the Hispanias.
Fox is going to start talking about battle cruisers.
Actually, honestly, I would recommend they use battle cruisers, if anything. That's
Right,
probably one of
and,
the best things to
the
get.
role of the Hispanias, as you said yourself, is to backstop the cruisers.
This is true. And I don't think that will change very much, even with larger battleships.
And the role of the Spanish Navy is mainly deterrence and commerce protection.
Indeed, that's entirely correct, and I don't think that will change either.
Why would they build battleships for this role? Why would they not build battle cruisers?
See, no, they build both.
Why?
Because you still
Why
need...
do you need a battleship?
You still need that backstop. The only difference is now...
No, you don't.
You have a
Why?
more powerful cruiser, you would want a more powerful backstop. Because
No,
bear in mind...
Yes. So,
Because bear in mind...
here's why I brought up
this is-
Tiger Fleet.
Yeah, Dragon, it's important to bear in mind that up until Franco's massive rebuilding efforts in the aftermath of the Spanish Civil War, an awful lot of internal Spanish commerce has to go by sea in coastal waters.
Then instead of making a battleship, make a battle cruiser. Make a fast battleship style battle cruiser.
Right, yeah,
It's better for the role.
right, Dragon. There's a reason I brought up Tiger here, and it's relevant. Because during their explorations of what to do with Tiger, there was a proposal to rebuild her with oil-fired engines. And design continuations for a ship based off Tiger because they're working with the Japanese at this point. But doctrinally, the main role of the Spanish Navy is commerce protection and coastal protection.
Deterrence as well. That is an important thing, though. You can't just...
Yeah. And what's their main threat? It's the Italians.
And if they piss off the French, the French.
To a certain extent, but again...
Yeah, but any war with France is going to be a land war.
De Riviera isn't... He's sort of seen quite like a Mussolini-like not to the same scale, but it's... There's not much international animosity towards Spain at the moment. They're very much doing their own thing, and no one really cares about what Spain does.
Yeah,
they don't necessarily need the deterrence of a battleship, because what have they got? What do they have in real life? 3 Spaniards that we're not going to do,
They're not deterrent.
against.
Well, no.
Who are they deterring?
Well,
Yugoslavian?
Well, no.
Fleet?
Well, no. Thing is, this is again a fundamental misunderstanding of deterrence. It's not about, yes, the Hispanias are going to win a stand-up fight with the Italian Navy if the Italian Navy shows up. No, of course they're not. But they mean the Italian Navy has to show up in force if it wants to win a stand-up fight.
But why do you need a battleship to do that?
Because if Spain just has a force of 8-inch cruisers, the Italians will go, okay.
That's not what we said, though.
No, but
Yeah.
that's what you asked. Why do you need...
No. Well,
why can't you use battle cruisers in this role? Yeah.
Yeah, because here's the plan.
I must admit, it does make more sense now.
The battle cruisers would have the ability to protect and project power against. As far as I'm aware, the main threat the Spanish were thinking of were the Italians.
Honestly, at this point, we may as well just build fast battleships and square the circle.
You mean what I said?
You can't build them yet.
Given we have 30,000...
On 35,000 tons,
in
you
the
We're not even on 30,000.
really
No,
build
Boxer, we're not even on 35,000. We're on 30,000.
30,000 tons in the mid. Given we're fighting the Italians, 30,000 tons
earlier.
in the mid 30s. Given that
Mid-20s.
Mid-20s. Given that we don't yes, we have dockyards, we can build them themselves, but that doesn't mean we can't follow the policy Spain has followed with the Hispanias and other ships of buying basically the designs from Britain and going with that. A ship of about 30,000 tons with mid-20s era British boilers, hydrodynamic knowledge, and bearing in mind we only have to fight the Spanish and possibly the French, armed with 9 14-inch guns in 3 triple turrets, doing about 29 knots.
Right.
No,
That
Foxo, let me finish. I'm going to kill this one right then and there. Battlecruiser F3. It is almost exactly what we say. It goes 29 knots. It has 3x3 15-inch turrets, but they're all forwards to save extra weight.
It's not really what
Would
you
I know
want,
what its
though.
tonnage is, Fleet?
It's not. That's not really what you want, though. Really.
But what is it? But would I like to know what its tonnage is?
Let me guess. It's about exactly what I just said, isn't it?
No, it's 35,000 ton.
That's a design 4 years. Yes, Dragon. That's a design that's 4 years older.
But it's not changed that much in those 4 years.
You would be monumentally surprised at quite how
I
much
wouldn't,
changed.
considering this is what
I
the
wouldn't
British were
be,
looking at.
right. Also, it's the fact of
Yeah,
unless you're willing to build an admiral, you're not getting a fast battleship at this point.
I
Yeah.
mean, you.
Let's be real.
I mean, yeah, that's a fundamental-
Because
Because
if
things
you
like
want
T3.
battleship grade armor and battleship grade guns, 8 of them, you're looking at a QE, and I don't get why people call QEs fast battleships because they're slow.
They're faster battleships.
I mean, I
the
do.
best.
Yes,
They were pretty fast for when they were introduced.
I will point
Yeah.
out that as Spain, we need battleship guns and battleship armor. We can have our battle
Why?
cruisers as well, but we need a deterrent for them to hide behind if shit
Why
hits the
do
fan.
you need this
Because-
battleship?
because-
Where is? You
Right,
still
wait,
need a battleship to face a battle.
You've
You still
you
need
don't-
at least
you don't
battle cruisers
actually
to
need-
face
yeah, you don't
battleships,
actually
and the
need
Italians
a
don't have
battleship.
any.
We don't actually need a dedicated battleship to fight the Italians.
all I'm
Hey.
going to say is, right, Tiger was 28 knots, right?
Well, we don't want Tiger for one thing. Good lord.
Now, I'm using this as a comparison, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Tiger was 28 knots.
Hmm.
This was coal-fired.
Yes, I'm aware.
She had 13.5-inch guns
Uh huh.
and pretty good armor.
Uh huh.
What
yeah,
she was.
This is all good.
She can effectively run and backstop with any cruisers we have.
I mean, I appreciate what you're all saying, but again,
And
Yeah, they're finished.
would any Italian cruiser be willing to fight her?
of course not.
No.
Yeah, of course not. I mean, obviously.
Is there an Italian battleship that's fast enough to force an engagement?
No, there isn't.
So there's nothing that can force an engagement that the Italians have against the battlecruiser. Unless the battlecruiser wishes to take the fight.
Yes,
Which is where
this
building
would-
a modern 30,000 ton battlecruiser comes.
this
Because you can reasonably get 9 guns and a 9 to 11-inch belt on a 30,000 ton battlecruiser.
So, actually,
They're fast enough to run with the cruisers.
interesting you mentioned that, by the way, Reaper. Reaper's suggesting basically take one of the turrets off it, shrink it down, and try and mass produce it. Britain in 1929 came up with a whole bunch of small battleship design, similar to what you're thinking. They deemed them inefficient and not worth building.
small
by any
battleships.
by any
Who
means.
on earth said I was thinking about small battleships?
Well, you're getting 30,000 tons.
That's
so-
only 5,000 tons off a treaty battleship.
Yeah, but these small battleships are 25,000 tons.
Yes, which is 10,000 tons of a treaty battleship, which is significantly more.
But it's what we can effectively produce, potentially. And also, that's just these point of... This is going responding to Reaper's thing of ditching A to try and do this. Because keep in mind, most of the British designs at this point are already looking at 35,000 tons or bigger. The smaller ones were looked at when basically the treaty restrictions came in place.
Wow,
And
and
it's
can I
like-
finish
it's
the
basically
battlecruiser explanation?
Yes.
And think, if you are a battlecruiser, is fundamentally part of the Commerce War, and they're nowhere near as big and scary as a battleship is to the press. You can very much more easily defend getting, say, 3 of I don't know, 3 Super Tigers that have 14-inch guns and do 30 knots with oil-fired boilers and a 10-inch belt.
That feels like aiming low. That feels like aiming way too low. I'm sure we can do
It's
better.
aiming realistically.
I'm sure we could do better than Super Tiger, something that looks far more modern.
Why? Why do we care about looks?
There's also the fact that the Tigers are some of the best designed battle cruisers efficiency-wise ever.
Yes, but I want triple turrets
Why?
because I want 9 guns.
Why?
Because I want 9 14-inch guns. Because that's putting us in a good step for the future, because eventually these ships will need replacing, and it will be triples that replace them. Because sticking with twins in the 30s
No,
is
well-
stupid.
But that's not true at all, though. A lot of nations looked at twins. Britain was still looking at twins in the 40s.
Right, okay.
Like,
Hello, Vanguard.
Remember,
How are
we
you
even,
have
even
today?
including Vanguard.
yeah, the triple 18 proposed for Lion. Sorry, the twin 18s proposed for Lion and shit.
There was some also for twin
Uh,
16s.
But
Yeah.
essentially, you've got to keep these ships in service.
Good.
And unlike, say, the Royal Navy or the US
Foxel, we
or
have
the Germans,
we have a nearly unlimited budget. I can replace these ships in
For
5
now,
years.
we have a nearly unlimited budget.
Yeah, like and also
But
We cannot guarantee we will have an unlimited budget forever.
but that's not my point. My point is that these are still very early battleship grade triple turrets in this era.
they are.
There is still major issues with the designs that are in service.
Yes, this is true, but given we know there will be no major conflict in Europe for another 10 years after these ships are introduced, we have time to work out the kinks.
Do we?
Spain's
We don't know this.
The economy is stabilized. No, it's
It's
us.
still-
No, it's us. It's us going back. We get to choose
Oh,
how
right.
this goes. We're literally discussing this now over a table in
Yeah, but
bloody
right, yeah,
Madrid.
but then I still don't know if it's going to be peaceful because all of a sudden, if Spain's doing this, other nations are going to start doing other things.
Yeah, but right, let's not get too bogged down there, because I'm proposing twins, because twins are a lot more mechanically simple.
You have a
Mechanically
point.
mechanically
have-
reliable.
you do have a
nations
point
already know
there.
how to work with them.
Dragon, you're ruining the point here. Let's take it slow. They're more mechanically reliable. They have a longer time between servicing. They require less maintenance overall. And they're cheaper. And they're cheaper to maintain. Going down a gun is unfortunate, but our ability to keep these ships ready and active will be greater. Because look at how much time the Nelsons had to spend in port because the 16s went wrong again.
All right, you know what? I'll accept that. That's fair. What I would just insist on though, look, I am still digging my heels in. You've made extremely valid points, but at this point, I feel it's a fundamental difference in doctrinal approach and values. Me, personally, I'd rather have a force of 6 battleships, or 3 or 4 battleships, and a large fleet of cruisers, of 8-inch cruisers and 6-inch cruisers to backstop them, or markedly to be out doing the commerce raiding with the potential to fall back if stuff goes wrong. That's my personal view. Given that everyone else has battleships, there are very few battle cruisers knocking around to actually menace trade, unless we're fighting the British or the Japanese, and I would rather have cruisers, destroyers, and maybe 1 or 2 carriers, given that we're in the treaties now. But that's just me. It is, however, fair to say that it is perfectly valid to have cruisers, destroyers, carriers, and 3 to 4 battle cruisers. That's another way you can do it. But personally, I prefer heavier armor, slightly less speed. I prefer
That's
battle
honestly,
let's
ships.
get our ships killed.
Right, if we have if we just can go everyone. Honestly, I would have 2 battleships, 4 battle cruisers,
Wouldn't we want 3
a
and 3?
pair of
Wouldn't want, because that means you have that lovely trio ratio. That lovely trio
No,
of ships.
because-
No, not in this case.
Because battle cruisers, it's a bit of hindsight for World War II. They work best in pairs when doing the commerce when doing the commerce warfare role.
Fair enough.
And so you don't want a lone capital ship because a lone capital ship can be ganked. So 2 squads of 2 battle cruisers, and you've got the cruiser force that these are integrated into, which those are the teeth of the navy.
I mean, we've got the Canarius class, which was a standout design.
Yeah, and sort of this. They're not going to be fighting other battle cruisers. They're there to keep the French and the Italian cruisers in port. And then you have 2 battleships. These are the big, heavy hitters of the fleet.
Ideally, we should arm these
Like-
with 16-inch guns and have them be relatively slow, but
No.
somewhat...
We'll point out we don't have the
I-
Canary class because they're finished in 35.
Yeah.
Well, no, but
We
don't have
given,
those yet.
No,
And we don't even have the designs on the tables yet in 25.
given
They were laid
the-
down in 28.
Yes, I'm aware, but I'm sure we could fast track something like them, given the counties already exist.
Yeah, I mean, if needs be, we can just go to Vickers. But... And then, because 2 battleships, these are the... Oh shit, the Italians are sending out Giulio Cesare to play vessels. And it's 2 of them. It's not much, but if the battle cruisers get chased into port, these things can fuck up any battleship that comes near. Pretty much.
Yeah. I mean, you said you wouldn't go for 16-inch guns on the battleships. Why not?
We can't, really.
Why can't we?
Where are we getting them
you
from?
go for 16-inch guns.
Why? Yeah, but why can't we just buy British?
Because Britain's already... Right.
Right,
Then,
no,
wait,
Dragon.
why? No, Foxo, before you try that again. Right. Why did France and Italy not get 16-inch guns?
Because they didn't have any domestic gun production that
But
had
they could
gone-
have. And France did. France had 17-inch guns, potentially.
Well, they didn't go with 16-inch guns because they wanted faster... Well, first of all,
Because-
Italy didn't go with 16-inch guns because they couldn't. They couldn't work up a design fast enough for the Littorio's build times. Same thing with the Richelieu's. Both the Italians and the French were going to 16s eventually.
No, they had designs for 16s. They weren't necessarily going to go for them.
Yes, they were. The follow-ons to the
weren't, 'cause-
Littorios were going to be armed with 16-inch guns. So were the
Hey,
follow-ons to the Richelieus.
No, they weren't.
Yes,
Most
they
of the
were.
Alsace designs, and the design that was put down, used 15s.
Well, okay, the French are being special snowflakes then, but the Italians were
No,
going
because
to.
the 15s were.
The Italians
The
were going to.
Italians had the
The
idea
Germans.
with UP41.
The Germans were going to. Bismarck was
They
based. The
had
Bismarck.
ideas. They didn't necessarily have them design the
Yeah,
guns. Yes, you're
but
referring to
the-
H39s.
Yes, but the point
But
is
the 15-inch gun.
the
that
trend.
Fleet,
The trend
Let me
was
finish.
for 16s.
no,
Yeah,
it wasn't.
actually, right. There's a
It wasn't.
specific
Not
reason, though.
Not in 1925. The trend is not for 16s for
But
most.
can we
nations.
start talking about trends and actually, and let me say my
Let
reason
me
for why I
no,
wouldn't go for the
because-
14s?
No, because let me finish mine. I wouldn't even go for 14s. Actually, I'd try and get for 15s. 15s are something we can get relatively reasonably. Also,
Why
from
would
Vickers,
we go? Why would we go for the special snowflake British caliber?
Because the 15-inch 42 is a well-proven gun with a
We
tremendous track history of function.
We can get 16.
It is mechanically reliable. It works. It is not the maximum possible capability. It appears diplomatic while not being a woefully outdated gun by this point, because the 14s, by 1925, the 14s that are being sold are more out of date. Unless you're getting the new ones, which are untested,
14s.
which are untested and unproven, versus the 15-inch 42, which is proven. Or you get the 1545, which has the 15 inches design lineage.
Dragon, I feel like you're laser focusing on the 15-inch gunner because it's your favourite. When in
No,
reality,
it's
the
just
correct choice
because
is the
it's
16.
more. No, it's just because the 15-inch gun does suit our purposes better if we want to go with that
For
than
the-
14s.
for the-
it doesn't though. Right.
For For the battleships, it's quite clear
For
to
the-
go for the 16s. For the battle cruisers, it
No.
absolutely should
No,
be
it's
the
not.
14s.
No. I'm gonna give an idea of you, Fleet. What makes sense is we go for 4x4, so 4x4,
2x4.
four triple
Four-
turrets of
12.
14-inch guns.
You're
hear
not
me
getting
out
that
here.
on 30, you're not getting that on 30,000 tons. Unless we're gimping on everything
If we're doing
else.
like 23, 24 knots, we can.
Yeah, and
Not
that's,
worth it, I don't think.
and that's fine.
Because hear me
Like,
out.
either-
Right, the whole idea behind going for the 14-inch gun is the fact that we already have it in service, and
No, we
we're
don't.
a small navy. We're getting them for the battle cruisers.
But then we don't have them in service yet. Like,
Yeah,
either-
but my idea is we go for 14-inch guns. We just go for the battleships have more of them. Because against the super dreadnoughts the Italians have, against the circus the French have, 14-inch guns will do.
I understand.
We're a
what you-
small navy. We've got minimal logistics ability.
Unfortunately, I'm going to have
by
to.
keeping the same ammunition, the same guns, the same barrels, if needs be, we can nick him off the battle cruisers, or we can nick him off the.
Unfortunately, I tend to come round and say, well, we're ruled by a somewhat dictatorial government, and as Dr. Clark said, like, you might be able to convince him of the 14-inch battle cruisers, but if you had given him an option with 12 14s for the battleships or 8 16s for the battleships, he's going to pick the ones with the bigger guns. Because that's the way, as Dr. Clark is so wonderfully quoted
certain
of
dictators
saying,
have been like that.
of dictators saying that. Well, Mussolini was like it, so was Hitler, and to be fair, so was this Spanish chap.
Well, De
What, in
Rivera's
25 he's
fit-
not.
He's
So what Phoenix said-
He's shifting away because he does shift away from the military government towards a civil. Like, yes, he is a military dictator, but he's. It's very strange how to describe Primo de Rivera because he just doesn't seem to be a ridiculously ambitious man. He's just a reasonably ambitious man. It's very strange.
Hello, Phoenix.
Hello. I mean, I would. One thing I will say is I'll kind of push back on dictator always want big gun, because it depends on how much insight they actually have into individual ship design and if they care that much. Likewise, there is also
He's an
the
army man. He doesn't really care about this shit.
military arguments for having, say, smaller caliber guns. So, for example, with the Littorio class, right? Using Mussolini as an example. So the preliminary design that the Littorios come from is a 16-inch gun battleship. It is a 16-inch gun battleship designed to be armored against 16-inch guns and go 29 to 30 knots, right? They can only fit 6 guns though, and this was a significant
It was 3
factor.
twins, wasn't it?
3 twins, yes. This is
Yeah.
a significant factor in why they went for 15-inch guns. They even when the Littorios were still working on the detailed design, there was a thought, hey, now that the size of this battleship has escalated, it's no longer actually 35,000 tons standard the way we originally planned, and we can actually fit more on 35,000 tons anyways in the first place. What about up-arming it? So they looked into having 10 15-inch guns or even 8 16-inch guns, and they decided the best balance of firepower, armor, and speed and number of guns was going to fit them at having 9 15-inch guns. So they ended up not going for the 16-inch guns until a much larger class of battleship that would follow, or not really that much larger, but just given where the Littorios escalated to. But again, it's just the actual military requirement or navy requirement in terms of how many guns we prefer to have for effective number of salvos per minute and such weighed them towards a smaller gun because they couldn't mount as many 16-inch guns, and they couldn't have as much ammunition on the ships as they would have wanted. So dictator does not always pick biggest gun, basically.
Yeah, no,
There's not always enough of a factor there.
Oh no, I completely agree. I just felt like quoting it since Dr. Klopp basically reels it
But
out.
if it's not relevant, then.
Yeah, look, but the problem I have is that a lot of this basically boils down to. A lot of this is basically everyone's coming at this from different doctrinal points of view.
Well,
And
yeah, but this is
isn't-
my point, though, is also, with
there
Spanish
isn't-
doctrine, because of flaws in Spanish doctrine, we lost a battleship a year ago.
Yes, we don't talk about what happened to Hispania.
Yes, we do.
No, we don't talk about what happened to Hispania.
Especially if we're now operating bigger ships, we very much do talk about that.
Well, okay, we talk about it internally, but I'll be damned if I have mentioned that bloody captain's name.
Oh, I'll mention it excellent because the case of no, this person was an idiot. The doctrine failed. This is where we need to learn from. Why are we saying this out loud? Simple. It forces them to do it because otherwise they'll keep hiding.
Like, Knight, I understand what you're saying, that the 15 inches is a good middle choice, but in terms of future-proofing these
It's
ships,
got a
I
proven
prefer...
track record.
It has, this is true, and I'm not denying that, but I just prefer to have the most capability.
So what, we're going with
only...
the Vickers 16-inch then?
Yeah, if I'm only
With
going
light shells?
No, I was actually probably going to go with the American 16-inch 50, as found on the Colorados.
No. Bad idea. Tremendously heavy. Also, as I recall, they were proven to not be that great for future-proofing either.
Oh, no, sorry, they're 16-inch 45s, I should say.
45,
sorry.
Yeah.
I mean, they were okay. It was just the original configuration of the shell was not fantastic. I mean, I'm a little lost. I'm not sure. What was the original question?
So basically, that friendly,
we're talking 1920.
The friendly Macedonian man has shown up again. Remember him? He's shown up in Spain this time. We've got 5 30,000-ton dockyards. It's 1925. The economy's stabilised. We don't have to worry about having a budget of any sort. We're basically just free to go ham. And when we've basically spent the last half an hour to an hour humming and hawing over different configurations of the Spanish Navy, how we're going to be dragging to the treaties and what that would mean.
Also, me and Fox have tried to place the point on that we don't really have the current institutional knowledge to operate 30,000-ton battleships yet. Like, the Navy is not in a state where we are ready for this immediate jump.
Whereas I dug my heels in. They
Thank
operate
you.
the Hispania's Phoenix. You can't just sit there and tell me there's that much difference between operating a 16,000-ton battleship and a 30,000-ton battleship.
I mean, given how they were envisioning using the Hispanias, I mean, I would say there's a significant difference, especially if you're talking about having, say, squadron operations and such. I mean, I think it's just, I mean, given how they were used, I think there is definitely a step up. Now, granted, they could still decide to just bum rush it through with we want 4 big battleships because we want 4 big battleships and to have something to come to the treaties with. Granted, you'll probably if it's 1925, the treaties have already been settled, and you're more likely going to be, say, in a negotiation with the British as to what kind of limits the British want you to have.
I argue
suggested we'll try and demand the same as the French and the Italians.
Oh, that's never going to fly. Absolutely,
exactly.
Yeah, no. So when the Spanish historically went to ask for treaty tonnage, they were only given like not even half of what the French and the Italians had.
So what, 75,000 tons, give or take?
81,500 tons,
okay.
Which was basically only enough for 3 battleships of less than 35,000 tons. Like, what would it actually come out to for 3 battleships? 27,000 tons, roughly, which is actually, I mean, the other thing for Spain, like, if we're talking about 1925, moderate displacement battleships don't make terrible. They're not a terrible choice. I mean, because remember, at this point, if everything is historical up to this point, right? The Italians are still running around with their 12-inch battleships. The French have nothing stronger than a Bretagne. A modern 27,000-ton battleship is still larger than any of these ships. And you're going to be able to fit more powerful armament, armor, and speed than any of these pre-World War I designs. Now, granted, you will also incentivize them to start building battleships earlier. I mean, the French will definitely not respond to this. And the Italians will be, as soon as the French do, the Italians will probably also look to respond, and they will also probably go towards full-size battleships because that was just the opinion of the Italian Navy at the time.
Well, yeah, of course. Like, I don't know. We might see an early version of Dunkirk and Strasbourg from the French, partially because to keep costs down and partially to sort of spin up their industry again, with sort of a let's take it steady first and foremost. But the Italians are just going to jump straight to full on. You're quite right.
Yeah, but I mean, I mean, it's just. I mean, this is the problem with Spain. Spain is a really tough position even if you throw this money at them of like they now have resources to do more than nothing, but they're also just in a position where they are surrounded by so many powers of such a higher caliber that there's really
It's
not
gonna
much they
suck.
can
Yeah,
consider
it's gonna
outside of it.
suck.
Yeah,
No matter what you do.
They almost basically have to plan around being in a coalition with somebody and planning to that effect. Which basically, if you're gonna stay on, say, a Republican path, you'll be probably trying to buddy up with the French.
Whereas if we
If
stay
you're going to lean towards
monarchist,
being fascist,
if we
you're
stay-
probably going
because thing is,
to buddy up with the
bear in mind we've stabilized
Italians.
we've stabilized the economy, and we're still the Spanish monarchy. So, is there any the Republican Revolution of 1931 may not happen?
Okay. I mean,
Which of course,
So,
and of course, the Republican Revolution of 1931 is what leads to the Spanish Civil War. If we have a stable economy and that doesn't happen, and we remain the Kingdom of Spain, that leads to us going into the 30s in a much better position. Like, I'm not saying it's all sunshine and roses in Spain, but we haven't got political
there is
militias. We haven't got political militias fighting in the streets every day.
Yeah, no, exactly, and you don't have to suffer from the grievous economic decline that Spain went through because of the Spanish Civil War and the destruction that caused.
You also don't get the massive railway building program that Franco went on after the Spanish Civil War, which removed a lot of the need for a lot of the Spanish coastal commerce traffic that had been a major part of Spain's domestic shipping transportation network prior to the Civil War. But I suppose that's made up for with the fact that we now have a fleet that stands a reasonable chance of protecting that coastal convoy network.
I mean, it's one of those things where I'll say this. So long as you have an ally who is taking the brunt of the heat off of you, yes. This is, again, like as soon as like if Spain is able to build a credible surface fleet, then it's not going to be ignored, and then everybody is going to start building sooner. And particularly the French and the Italians have the early 70,000 tons that they can start using, as well as replacement tonnage too. That's also a factor because they did lose battleships early. And you are still Spain with your limited industrial capability, even with a lot of money to throw at the problem.
I'm back.
We still on the question?
Yes, we're still on the question.
Right.
I think
Okay.
we've been discussing the actual limits. I think Phoenix has hit upon a fairly interesting concept that our limits will probably be 3 battleships of around 27,000 tons, or 3 capital ships of around 27,000 tons, with all our limits spinning out from that. Which of course then leads to the French responding, and then how will Spain shape? How will Spain shape up in the 40s? That's it. Like, that is getting a bit beyond. We're not really worried so
Everything
much.
explodes because of the Civil War.
No, there is no Civil War.
Yes, there is.
No, there isn't. If we've got a stabilized economy, there's no reason.
There's
for
still
the...
a Civil war.
No,
Because there's an
you have to
event
somehow
in
magic away the
1929
Great
that
Depression,
crashes
but-
the world's economy.
yes, but if we've got a more stabilized economy, we can
Doesn't
weather
make a
that
difference.
rather than the Republican Revolution happening.
Spain
There is
doesn't really have the
nothing
financial
we can
resources or
do.
economy to weather that, to be honest.
We literally have the question saying the economy is stabilized and growing.
Yeah, right. Just because it's stabilized
Put it this way,
does not
this
mean it's future-proof.
Like, remember, this is an event that caused even the major powers to stall out a lot of their construction programs. This was not something that was just shrugged off. And Spain is just, their economy is, even when Spain's economy is stable, it's still a relatively fragile thing. And it's also just, the industrial capacity really is not there. Like, as much as, Italy struggles in industrial capacity compared to the great powers, like Spain in 1928 has, half the industrial capacity of Italy, I think. Relative, it's not a, yeah.
You have to remember that the Great Depression is that bad it affects the Soviet Union,
Jesus.
an economy that's almost completely isolated from the global trade.
This war is happening one way or another. We can just hope it ends up well.
Okay, so just to go back, since we're getting 27,000 ton ship, what did we decide on we were actually making?
If we only get 3 ships at 27,000 tons, then
Do I get my Tigers?
On the one hand, I can see the benefits of your battlecruiser proposal, Foxo. On the other hand, I would, if possible, I'd honestly, given what we know, I'd rather have, and hear me out here, I'd rather have 6 ships that can do three ships that can do about 25 to 26 knots, are carrying an armored to resist 14-inch guns, and then the only thing is then how many 14-inch guns can you then get with those 2 caveats applied? Because that is fast enough to be faster than anything that isn't a British battlecruiser or the Congos, and the Congos aren't going to show up, but powerful enough to still be more powerful than any of the legacy capital ships they could run up against.
At that point, with oil firing, you can just make an up armored and faster, but 28 knots, 30 knots Tiger. Because if you use even early oil-fired boilers, as was proposed for Tiger, you can do that.
I mean, if we shave off the extra 2 knots of speed, Foxo, and use that extra saved weight, could we get a ship resistant to 15 or 16-inch guns? At least across the main belt.
Why are we trying to become that heavily resistant?
Because
that
would,
much
I'd
armor
also
would
note
that would
that,
be
like,
incredibly useful.
Using Tiger as a base is less advisable unless you want something that's just going to die to any kind of underwater damage or bombs or plunging fire.
It needs to be a new design.
You gotta kind of recalibrate some of the expected.
It's got to be a new design.
On a given tonnage for a battleship, because torpedo defense and deck armor is going to be our significant changes. Not to mention, you gotta fit a different kind of secondary battery or AA battery.
I mean, this is the 20, so it's not
1925 in particular.
25.
Foxo,
So
I've just had a thought. So you know the F3 design we were talking about previously?
Yeah.
If we take that ship, drop the turrets down to twins, but basically, and all the superstructural improvements and hull improvements and subdivision improvements that ship has, if we then take the basic hull, rearrange it so that it's 2 forward, 1 aft, either with triples or twins, we then use that improved hull form, the improved ability to resist underwater explosions, the better secondary battery arrangement, the better superstructure, and we then basically run with that. I think my choice would be either 615s or 8 to 9. And if I say, if it's 8, it's 2 triples and a twin, or it's 9 with 3 triple 14s. And you basically run off that as a concept, because Spain could probably realistically purchase the plans for such a vessel.
So you're talking about F2.
That's a 35,000-ton vessel.
Yeah, you're talking about F2 there, which is also 35,000.
No, I'm
tons.
aware, but we can. No, I'm saying you use the hull, you use the design as a base, and then the first thing you do is you run it through the printer to shrink it. Then you
how?
Because you're starting with. I'm not saying it's exactly an F3 design. I'm just saying take the basic concept of a modern.
No, like Fleet. What I'm referring to is what you've described there is literally battlecruiser F2.
Yes, but which
has 6
God's sake.
guns and 3 twin turrets.
Yes, I'm.
6 guns in 3 twins, isn't it?
That's what I just said. 6 guns and 3 twins.
But what I'm saying is,
triples.
we can probably get if you're saying we can get an improved Tiger with thicker armor on 27,000 tons, why can't we get with a newer hull, or something based on a newer hull, something even better, with 5 more years of technical development, boiler engineering development?
Because on average, we're having to cut 8,000 tons off these. designs
Yes.
from others.
Yeah, 'cause,
So
like,
why?
all-
So
all- 'cause
why? So
essentially-
why
Fleet,
can
let-
you?
let-
Why can you say, yes, I can take this inefficient Tiger design, and I will have this brilliant ship with modern technology? And when I say, well, why don't we take a more modern ship and trim it down? You go, oh no, Fleet, we can't do that. We're too much trim off. Rah,
Because
rah,
it's
rah, rah,
easier
rah,
to
rah, rah.
update
Both
something-
are wrong.
Yeah,
Right,
both are not
right,
necessarily
right.
right. Fox's suggestion going off the idea of a better, but your suggestion is try and take a design that was meant for 35,000 tons.
I was more thinking of the concept of the design rather than the actual design itself.
And then we're chopping 8. Yeah, but this is what others were looking at for your concept for how it would work. So, other people who are way better at naval design than me and you, Fleet, to be honest, looked at what that would require, and they were on average saying about 35,000 tons. And you're wanting to chop 8,000 tons off it while potentially increasing the armor.
Because I think you're misunderstanding what I was asking for with the Tigers.
She's asking for an improved Tiger-style design. Where
Because I'm essentially asking for Tigers, but oil-fired with a uniform 9-inch belt.
and with modern
9-inch
'Cause
belt.
I-
I am gonna have to give
No.
massive pushback on that. That's not enough armor.
Yeah, right, because hear me out here. Because Tigers, 28,000 tons. So she's the same size bracket. If we don't do the massive increase in subdivision that you get with these 1920s battleship designs, if we use the advances in tech, especially with how much lighter per shaft horsepower the oil-fired engines are to the coal-fired, we can squeeze it down. We can squeeze a uniform belt out of it, and then we get it's not.
Oh my
I'm
god.
just-
I'm good at what Phoenix is laughing at here, so go on, Phoenix.
Yes, this is. I mean, well, she's 28,500 tons normal displacement. I'm not sure what her standard displacement equivalent would be, but yeah, this is the fundamental problem is if you're working with hulls this old, you have the problem of their ability to resist torpedo damage is basically non-existent. It's basically entirely dependent on subdivision, which is generally subpar in this era. This is why, like, such an emphasis on having improved, actually having torpedo defense systems on modern ships, either or bulging old ships. Like, for example, just to pull as an example, right? When you look at the Italians and their radical rebuilds of their dreadnought battleships, the single biggest thing that made that entire process possible was that they were able to concentrate 75,000 or more shaft horsepower on just 2 shafts, and the fact that they could fit the torpedo defense system largely within the confines of the hull, using that space that was freed up by ditching 2 of the turbine groups and all the outboard boilers and such, because it made it viable as a ship that was decently protected against torpedoes and could still make the desired speed. So with a Tiger, you're not going to get a good torpedo defense without pulling out on something that size and with that hull form, without pulling out the outboard turbine groups, which then limits your speed. Then it depends on what kind of what your torpedo defense system is, right? Which is its own question. And then what are you doing about deck armor? And now we're also talking about we want to try and get a uniform 9-inch belt, which means for about about a third of the belt's length, we have to almost like a 80% increase in thickness. There's a lot of ask there versus say just designing a completely fresh ship.
Yeah, because
I
I'm talking about a Tiger style ship because
I don't mean
if we
actually hate
want
the Tiger
fast,
system.
yeah, if we want a fast ship that's got at least 8 big guns and can run with the cruisers effectively, we need to drop something. And realistically, 9 inches is the bare minimum
It's
to stop
9 inches is
stop
inadequate,
8-inch
to be
guns.
honest.
It's adequate. I mean, I'm seeing
You
9
just
inches.
want to stop 8-inch guns and get an 8 less than 8-inch belt. I mean, that's because I'm just going to do as an example, right? The French, when they were considering, what do we do about the Italian heavy cruisers, right? They went to about 175 millimeter belt to guarantee that they would resist 8-inch gunfire. And now the problem the Spanish ran into is, the French ran into is, hang on a second. So these are going to take tonnage out of our allowed capital ship tonnage, and the Italians still have the dreadnoughts. What do we do if we run into the Italian dreadnoughts with these 12-inch gunned, armored against 8-inch, basically large cruisers or small battleships, right? And the answer was, well, shit, we have to actually armor these against 12-inch guns, which is what saw them up armor the ships to having 9-inch inclined belts with the Dunkirk class, as it came to the Dunkirk class, and eventually they upped it to the 13-inch guns as well. And that was designed to enable the Dunkirk class to deal with both the Italian dreadnoughts and the Italian cruisers. And as it so happened, this basically left them in a perfect position for when it came to countering the Deutschland class panzer ships, because they were already armored against heavier guns than the Deutschlands had, and they already had the speed requirement down. So
you're telling me that if we go for the 9-inch belt, that these ships will be reasonably protected against the older Italian dreadnoughts?
Yeah, against the old 12-inch guns using shells that are World War I era shells, which means that you are basically that is the limit of what you're going to be protected against, and you're banking on nobody building anything new.
Yeah,
which
is.
You
Yeah,
want
this
more.
is-
not
I think a
great
uniform
for
9-inch belt won't
future-proofing.
work. You want it all. If we have future knowledge, we try and go with all or nothing.
Well, no, you have. Well, of course, we're going with all.
Yeah,
or nothing.
I'm already talking about dropping the belt extended on these.
And you think that all
Because-
you're going to get with that is 9 inches? If you're dropping the belt extended and the deck extended for all or nothing, we could easily get a 12-inch belt. No problems
Yeah,
at all.
but we need deck
I actually-
armor.
I actually do
Yes.
tend to agree we could probably get an 11 to 12-inch deck, not deck, belt.
So, yeah. The thing is, Foxo,
With some-
No.
if we're dropping the deck
Yes.
extended and we're dropping the belt extended, and to be blunt, given what we know, drop the conning tower as well. It's dead weight. So if we drop all of that, and we're using the most modern machinery with the best boilers we can buy, there is no reason why we can't have at least a 3-inch deck and an 11 to 12-inch belt if we are doing true all or nothing.
It's
A 9-inch
Right.
belt is not sufficient for if we're looking forward.
Especially not
Maybe
if
we
the,
could go to
especially-
10 or
We ran
11.
into the same trap that Dunkirk ran into, really.
Yeah,
Because that was
but-
the exact same. Which is, I mean, granted, this is also just a problem with building the smaller battleships in general, which is why the Italian Navy was so against it. But
Again, this
you know,
is
you-
why
you do run
this is
into-
why I would be happy to drop speed from 28 to 26, or heck, even 24
Yeah,
knots. That still gives us
which I
enough
think you
time.
kind of have to do,
yeah,
because
I
the problem
think-
you run into is, we're trying, even using the example I did with Dunkirk. Remember, you got to remember, Dunkirk is the product of it's almost half a decade down the line from where we're talking, right? And that still required a lot of relatively cutting edge stuff that the French had that was not replicated in a lot of other navies at the time in terms of, say, machinery design and power density. I mean, the French and the Italians did very good in that regard compared to everybody else at that point in time. And then you were also talking about, say, again, the Dunkirk's infamously using their 2 quadruple turrets and the all-forward arrangement and such to help save as much citadel length as possible.
It's for,
The reason why
if
I
these are
don't
built to
think
run with cruisers, they're good enough to keep the old 12-inch out.
But yeah, but the thing is, they're not.
Okay.
The thing is, given what we've been talking about, I am going to retract my previous support for the whole building. The
issue
building
is-
the what?
They're small. They're small battleships. If you build them as battleships, and they will just get clapped.
I also think 24 knots is dead.
Yeah,
24
why?
knots
because the
the
Italians can bring
standard
more
because the
battleships.
standard battle line for Italy that we know they're going to get is going to go 27.
Yes, but that's after extensive rebuilding, and the
Yes,
French
but
won't.
this is us, remember?
Yes, it is, but I would point out that by the time that they're even considering that, the treaties will have collapsed, and we'll be able to build an answer to that.
By then, the civil war started.
Yeah,
Basically.
at that point, it's moot anyway. So,
Yeah, but I at least want to give us the best ships we can for what we can.
well, I
And
will
24
not.
knots will just mean the ships.
I mean, I
are
will
just not
interject
going to
here and
work
make the
very well.
point that technically, if you really wanted you could build two 35,000-ton battleships as well if it's the size thing
can't.
is such a concern. It's
Can't.
just you will only have two battleships.
We got a maximum dockyard size of 30,000 tons.
Well, because they'll
Oh,
build
okay, never mind then.
two 30,000-ton battleships then.
And you got 21,000 tons left over for
A diminutive.
smaller
Hey,
ships,
yeah,
but
we'll
the-
build two 30,000-ton quasi-fast battleships. Well, I say quasi-note, which can do about 25, 26
I would
knots.
25, 26 knots is what I would say is.
And then armor them to resist. So let's say give them a 12, 13-inch belt, 3, 4-inch deck, arm them with 8, 14-inch guns, and then using the remaining 21,000 tons, you basically build what is in essence a large, fast cruiser. That thing is
I still
only
think
armored.
14-inch guns is a
You
mistake.
just want a Queen Elizabeth.
I mean, I suppose you could call
To be
it
fair,
that.
Spain was already looking at a Queen Elizabeth class that was downscaled.
I mean, to be fair, it's not
But,
it's not a bad idea. A proper speed Queen Elizabeth is not the worst idea I can think of.
Well, no,
I still
because
wouldn't go 14-inch guns.
Queen Elizabeth's as built at 32,000 tons and 24 knots.
Yes, they are, but we have far more experience. We have small tube boilers. We have all firing, and
You've also got better hull form,
yes,
admittedly.
yeah. So we could
We still
definitely.
still want to be worried about torpedo and deck. That is
Yeah.
still a priority. But
But I
as you said,
I
oh
don't.
God, Phoenix, what were you thinking?
I lost my train of thought, to be honest. I
Oh
mean,
bloody hell!
this
The
is
man
one of
lost
those
his
things
train
where-
of thought. It's a hell of a
It's just-
rabbit hole.
Yeah, no, this is just to say, the framing of these questions is always really difficult because navies and how they're built and what they try and do is always so dependent on the industrial capacity that supports
Yeah.
them, the role of the navy, what their operational context is, right? Like alliance systems and such. And so it can get very hard to answer when we kind of throw out well, they magically have the infrastructure and they also gain a bunch of money. But then, like, what
they get
happens?
the infrastructure.
What else
for the
is on
fleet,
top of
but
that?
what else is good question? Because it's why I think
you
carriers are
change
useless.
the entire context in which Spain exists, or any country like this exists, which makes it very difficult to say answer because there's so many different diverging points at that point.
I'm assuming basically since we've got 6 slips, at least one naval base has been made where we can
Well, no.
take a
Well, no.
30,000 ship.
He said
On the other
we
hand,
got
carriers.
he
I think
said-
are useless for us
Yeah,
because we don't
he's-
have the plane industry.
Yeah, he said we'd got 5 dockyards with the 30,000 tons, which to me says not only have you got 5 slips of 30,000 tons, you've probably also got at least 3, probably 5 dry docks of 30,000 tons to do fitting out in.
No, they could just be built on. They can potentially just be done on the slip, or be built up on the slip, then just built up alongside a pier.
Or they've just expanded Sevilla dockyards, so now
This is also one of those things where it's just. This is again where I say the framing is so weird because we are basically you're trying to give Spain magically has this the infrastructure of building battleships that vastly exceeds any rate at which they built
Basically,
ships
so
in
far
the
it's been
past.
buy everything in.
Yeah.
just answer, John.
Buy it in. Buy the steel in. Like,
Why is Spain capable of why does Spain have the infrastructure to outbuild Japan without having the industry or
Yeah,
capacity
this is
to have ever gotten to that point?
Yeah,
This is just one of those inevitable problems, and it's like it kind of screws up the context of the navy in which you're talking about the whole question. I don't know. It's just why I'm not a huge fan of questions like these because it gets this messy.
I think they can be interesting to think of some stuff, but
Yeah,
That's
no,
also
there's
agree
just
with
so
what they're actually
much
talking about.
experiments in them. It's just complicated outside of that.
anyone make an argument for why Spain shouldn't embrace Junacol? Junacol's dead.
It's been
Yeah.
it
Dead
was,
and buried.
it was dead on arrival.
Junacol is a terrible concept for 1925.
Yeah, I mean, just to give a more complete answer on this, it's worth. I mean, Junacol was it's a doctrine that was very specific to exactly when
Excuse
it came
me
out,
one
which was
second.
the 1880s. Because this was a period in which before you didn't have quick firing guns, and the torpedo was introduced at a time when it was something with almost like a torpedo boat there was almost no answer in coastal waters, and this was the main concern the French always had, right? The Royal Navy, the superior navy, they will use their battleships to enforce a close blockade against French shores. Now, the torpedo boat with its torpedoes gave you an answer to this because suddenly you had these vessels that were very, very difficult to stop for any high seas navy that could operate in the coast. They were cheap, massive disproportionate capability in that regard of coastal defense. and they basically would, in theory, ended the ability of someone like the Royal Navy to close blockade any country with a good torpedo boat fleet. And the other half of this, of course, was cruiser raiding. Now, why this fell apart is because technology moved on, right? Quick firing guns came out. Navies developed torpedo boat destroyers that could sail with a high seas fleet and carry quick firing guns and kill torpedo boats. And were actually more effective torpedo delivery mechanisms than torpedo boats for high seas use. And this really heavily devalued the capabilities of any torpedo boats. And likewise, the cruiser rating thing just fell into the inevitable trap that a larger navy is going to inevitably have more resources to focus on cruisers or larger ships to counter your cruisers. So the rating strategy is not actually going to work. It's attrition against your favor, in fact, as the rating country. So the whole doctrine kind of fell apart just because technology moved on and a lot of the underlying assumptions were a little bit optimistic. As the French were the French thinkers behind it was really searching for a way out of the problem that they were in with regards to the British, and this seemed to be a way out, but they were somewhat gaslighting themselves the entire time.
Yeah.
Like there's elements in the strategy that can make sense, but again, it's a whole strategy. It just really was very specific to its time and not fantastic.
Yeah, and then you take into account that the role for the Spanish Navy in this time period is very much commerce protection. And you can't really protect and project commerce with coastal torpedo boats.
Yeah. Well, I mean, fundamentally, honestly, with Spain, I mean, once they lose the significant parts of their overseas empire, they're basically the Royal Navy is Spain's merchant fleet protector. This is the fundamental thing. Spain is at the mercy of the British in almost every regard. I mean, this is why, for example, they will be able to, in World War II, prevent the Spanish, or basically make it so Franco would not even consider acting with the Axis because they could entirely blockade any kind of oil going to Spain whatsoever. In fact, they did, and they basically calculated, how much oil is Spain going to need to survive as a nation. Whatever that amount is, we'll reduce it by about 20%, and we'll give them that 80% of that oil. That's what will allow Spain to get. It'll do damage to Spain's economy, yes, but this is why we can guarantee that they will have no spare oil to re-export to the Axis, and certainly will not be able to consider any military adventures, which was a very effective strategy, to be blunt. But yeah.
So basically, we've just I would say we hammered that question into the dirt, but we did a lot more than that. I feel like we quite decisively and conclusively battered that question over the head with a sledgehammer, so much so that it stopped resembling the original question. But that one question has taken up basically all the time we have here, folks.
Jeez.
Well, we
That's fine,
definitely.
'cause I'm about to have to disappear for a little bit.
We gave it a good solid shake anyway. Fantastic. So, thank you very much, everyone, for coming. I hope you enjoyed that little diversion. I know I did.
Wait, it's over already?
Yep. I had
This week's doing Hoy next, remember?
Yep.
Right, I need to kidnap Mep.
Why do you need to kidnap me?
Right, anyway. So,
Taking it to the EU4 dungeon.
Right.
thank you very much for coming, everybody. I hope you had a fantastic time on YouTube and on Discord. Obviously, tune in tomorrow at 10 o'clock for the discussion with me and Rex on Soviet naval aviation. Take care, folks,
That's
and I'll
gonna be
catch you next
interesting.
time. Bye-bye.
Clearly you need to